Hello everyone, my name is Lauren-Jane. I'm a junior doctor. I'm just finishing up F1 and I wanted to share with you some of the things that I've learned this year. I've really loved F1 and even if you don't take any of these tips on board, I'm sure you'll be just fine. It's a really good year. Tip number one, everyone really struggles with this one because you want to do a good job and there's so much work to be done in such a short space of time sometimes, but take your breaks. It can be difficult to say to people, I'm going, but as long as you've done everything that's in emergency or urgent kind of work, you need to make sure that you are well hydrated, well fed, rested. You need to have made sure you've used the bathroom if you need to go, because you need to be able to make coherent, clear clinical decisions. And in some ways, taking a break is part of your job. In order to safeguard your patients, you need to be thinking clearly. So please take your breaks. You need to be taking them. Tip number two, ask who your F2 is. So if you're on a niche speciality like urology, your hierarchy is probably yourself as the F1, the urology reg and then the urology consultant, and they're both going to be in bed or at home out of hours and you're kind of on your own. Sometimes you might have a query that is below the threshold of wanting to wake the reg up at 3 a.m, but also you feel like you need a bit of support and you need to talk something through. The first thing to say is, if you have any kind of concern, wake your reg up. If you're worried about a patient, wake your reg up, because they won't criticise you for waking them up, hopefully, but they will criticise you if that patient's really unwell and you haven't woken them up. So if in doubt, wake them up. If you think it's something that you can manage yourself, but you just want some support, it's a really good idea to find out who your nearest F2 is. So if you're on urology, for example, there's not a urology F2, but there will be a general surgery F2 or someone who's a little bit related. Now, this person isn't going to help you with your workload necessarily, but they are around. You can ask your hospital coordinator to put you in contact with this person, and sometimes you just need someone to go and talk to and say, this patient has this, this and this. I'm thinking it's this, what should I do? And that can be really helpful, just to have someone that's there in the hospital alongside you that does your job and is slightly more senior, that can just be there to support you and offer an opinion. I've rang an F2 out of hours just to come and watch me put a catheter in, because I hadn't done one since for quite a while on a real patient, and I just felt like I needed that bit of support, to have someone who had done one just stand there with me and make sure I had the right equipment and that I was doing it properly. And that really took the pressure off me out of hours, and I found that really helpful, just to know that there is someone that I can contact if I need help. So how you contact that person very much depends on your hospital. We have an out of hours coordinator 24/7, and that person has all of the information for that. Hopefully your hospital has one of those. If not, there should be some way of contacting other people in your various teams. Always take a cardie, because believe it or not, hospitals are freezing out of hours, whether it's June or December. If you're on nights, take a cardie or a jumper, because at 5 a.m. you don't regulate your temperature very well, and you will thank me when you are not freezing in December. Even the mess sometimes is really cold. Our mess doesn't put the heating on in the winter, which is, don't get me. Also, always have change for the vendor, because some hospitals are not great for providing things out of hours like hot snacks or chocolate or crisps or whatever you need to get you through the night. I don't tend to eat much on nights, but sometimes I will really need a Kit Kat, and you want to make sure you've got the change for that, just in case you do. I think one of the things that people worry about is what to do in an emergency situation out of hours. It's that first time that you see something where the patient is really unwell and you think, I have no idea how to deal with this. Take a breath. You do know how to deal with this. It's just bringing that stuff that you learned in simulation into a real life setting. Your job as the F1 is to recognise that something is wrong, to alert people that something is wrong, to do an A to E, to do your bloods and your investigations and escalate appropriately. That's your job. It's not your job to be worrying about anything beyond that. Just get really good at noticing when someone is going downhill. Make sure you're good with OBS and picking up things like rest breaks, and make sure you're doing a really good and thorough A to E. And most importantly, just make sure you're escalating really quickly. If you are concerned, make sure someone more senior than you knows that you're concerned and why. And that really is all you need to do out of hours with someone who's really poorly. Just do your A to E, do all of the stuff I said, and escalate. In the early days, I always used to take with me my Oxford Handbook of the Foundation Programme or my Oxford Handbook of Clinical Medicine. Sometimes it's just really useful to have a guide just to flick through to use alongside the hospital guidelines, because sometimes you think it's been a while, I just want to look this up, and it's nice to have a book with integrity that's quite small and user-friendly that you can look things up in. So I would always take that in your backpack with you. You won't necessarily always need it, but it's nice to have it there. Okay, so you will hear this one from everyone, but feed your nurses. And this is a very smaller part of saying, just treat your nurses with respect. Your nurses have done this job and worked with this type of patient, whichever area you're at, for a really long time, and they know what they're about. And a good nurse can really make your job so much easier. This one's really important for a medico-legal reason, so know your limitations. If someone is asking you to do something which just doesn't feel right, it doesn't feel like you were taught this in medical school, or it feels like it should be above your level, go and talk to a senior or go and talk to someone else and just say, this doesn't feel like I should be doing this, it doesn't feel right, what should I do? And if you're really concerned, log it in the notes. I have disagreed with this, or whatever it is that you need to log. Be really clear about that, because as F1s we have very specific jobs, we're very protected in what we should be doing, what we shouldn't be doing. But that message doesn't filter down to everyone, and people don't always know what our job is, and you have to be very clear in yourself what you're supposed to be doing. Don't be afraid to say no if you feel, or rather than no, let me just go and talk that through with my senior, because I'm not sure that I'm able to do that. This one kind of bounces off the previous one, so do ask for help. When I first qualified, I was ringing the reg to ask if I could give someone paracetamol, and sometimes you just need that little bit of help. If you're in a situation you don't know what you need to do, you perhaps don't want to ring the reg because they're in bed, or you don't want to ring the med reg because you think it might be a silly question, just ring it. You know, the medical registrar, your registrar, people above you, they've all been where you are, and I think everyone would much rather you called and asked the question rather than went and did something that was a bit off the wall. It's always better to be cautious. As a general rule, do not cut corners with patient care. So there are things that we should do by the book. My advice would be to always do everything to the book. It might be a bit of a doom and gloom way of looking at things, but whenever I am in a situation where something's quite acute or urgent, I always think to myself, imagine that you're in coroner's court telling them what you did for this patient and why. And I try and work back from that. I always make sure that I do absolutely everything that I can. Every blood test, I tick every I dot every T. And that just is a way of making sure that I'm doing everything that I should be doing and that I can't be criticised for what I've done. And I think that's a very good way to be a doctor, is to be cautious of what you're doing and constantly assess, have I done enough? Have I covered all of the red flags? Have I done everything that anyone in my position would do? I think that's a good way to start your F1 and move up through your career. If you are struggling to get your leave, escalate it to someone. It's really not acceptable that we are not able to take our leave. I did struggle for the first 8 months to be able to get any leave off when I wanted it. Not I was able to take it, but I wasn't able to take it when I wanted it. I do have a son. I did find it difficult to get any time off with him in those school holidays. It was nearly impossible for about 8 months, and it's been easier since then. But it's disheartening, and I think it makes it harder to go to work if you're not able to go and do what you want to do. We have a junior doctor liaison officer who I escalated to when I was having issues taking leave. I'm not sure what you have in your hospital, but if you're having lots and lots of problems with your rota coordinator, I think escalate it, because if it's things like weddings and all of that stuff, it's just really not good for our mental health to be constantly denied the ability to be able to book a holiday a year in advance and all of that stuff. So please escalate if you're having issues. Don't suffer in silence. Finally, this one is super important both for yourself and for patient care. You need to prioritise self-care. It's way more important now than it's ever been. You do a really hard job. You work really long hours. This year, perhaps you will do a couple of 71-hour weeks like I have done, and the rules for life become different for you, because as humans, we're not meant to work for 71 hours in such physically and mentally draining, challenging situations. So sometimes I think we keep pushing ourselves on and on. You need to make time for yourself. You need to make time for your hobbies. And it's okay to be the one at home that says, I'm going to have a takeaway tonight because I can't cook, or I'm not going to go to this thing I didn't want to go to, or I am going to go to this thing. I'm going to make time for this because that's really important for my needs and what my needs are. And making sure that you are well fed, well hydrated is so important to how you're going to be able to get through those long days and those long weeks. your self-care has never been so important as it is now. You have to make yourself your #1 priority. It does sound a bit cheesy, but it's really important actually to your patient care. I hope these tips have been helpful. Let me know if you have any questions, thoughts or comments. Thank you. Bye.